Remedy Connected Universe is not a story of one world, it is a story of many, only a small number of which are truly explainable in human terms. Worlds can be found stacked one above another, placed side by side or inside larger ones, and they go by many names: thresholds, realities, and parallel timelines. This codex is intended as a summary of some of these, a foundation on which more in-depth analysis and theory can be built in the future. If you wish to find more information in any of the locations discussed here, additional codexes will be produced at a later date. Quantum Break and Max Payne instances, though heavily referenced in the Remedy Connected Universe, occur in separate and ultimately disconnected universes due to production disputes, and as such, will not be mentioned here. Let us begin our journey through these interconnected worlds at the most convenient place, the conceptual reality. Like most instances of Earth and the surrounding universal template, the conceptual reality is a familiar and instantly recognizable place, populated by the same species found on most Earths and containing predominantly recognizable locations. Indeed, for the majority of life on the planet, it would be difficult to tell much difference between their Earth and most of the others found in other instances. They live similar lives as their equivalents on those other Earths, governed by the same basic laws of physics, born to the same genome, and working at the same organisations and public bodies. However, this sense of normality is a lie, maintained so as to protect the status quo and stop the human population from discovering the terrifying truth that the universe is far less predictable than anyone would like to believe, and is under constant attack from unknowable entities older than reality itself. A sizable number of the human populace found on this Earth have innate abilities that allow them to perform feats that would be otherwise impossible. Through the power of the collective unconscious, ideals and belief can cause archetypal objects to develop abnormal properties without warning, casually tearing reality asunder and causing mass casualty. And in some places, the boundary between this conceptual reality and the worlds existing alongside it can become so thin that they begin to overwrite existence itself. This codex will cover 3 of these locations in the conceptual reality, all found across the mainland United States of America: Ordinary, Maine, Bright Falls, Washington, and the oldest house, New York. Prior to 2002, the small town of Ordinary, located in the forests of Maine, lived up to its name. No unusual events had been noted before this date outside the birth of 2 persons of interest, and its history has been considered so irrelevant that none of it is noted. Jesse and Dylan Faden, born and raised here, changed that forever. From the outside, these were normal children. They went to the local school, and after their lessons were finished, would travel to the local dump to find interesting trinkets. This was the routine that ended up causing the Faden kids to be the first to find the slide projector object of power, an otherwise normal slide projector that, through some unknowable calculation, had become imbued with the thoughts of the collective unconscious and the widespread metaphorical belief that film could open gateways to fictional worlds. By becoming an object of power, the slide projector suddenly became able to do exactly that, and as the Fadens experimented with the few dozen slides dumped alongside it, they found it could open portals to places known as slidescapes. These slidescapes were not bound to the laws of the conceptual reality, and each contained a different flavour of strains. House was a single, unoccupied house containing naught but peeling wallpaper that the Fadens used as a secret playhouse, and Meadow was similar to the side of a Midwestern highway, if the flowers there caused one to have vivid dreams of everything melting. This slidescape was particularly beloved by one of the Fadens' friends, Neil Hosenberg. A number of other slidescapes were visited by the Fadens, but data on them is unknown due to the horrifying series of events that would soon come to pass. In September of 2002, the slide projector OOP was taken from the Fadens by a gang led by their classmate Tom Barlow, who, having not learnt of the dangers presiding within some of the slidescapes, opened a door to Temple, a large concrete structure similar to a bomb shelter. The pitch black halls contained an entity known as the Not Mother, along with her spawn. Tricking Tom's gang into feeding off of her milk, this Not Mother was able to corrupt the children, over time transforming them into dung monkeys, violent, sociopathic monsters who would kill at the slightest provocation. This came to a head one school day, when the dung monkeys would savagely bludgeon one of the teachers to death, which caused a curfew to be placed on all school-aged children in the town. This would mark the awakening of the paranatural abilities of the elder Phaeton sibling, Jessie, whose wish that all adults in the town would go away would be fulfilled the following morning. Left isolated alongside her brother Dylan, with Neil Hosenberg having disappeared inside a slidescape earlier, Jessie would travel from her home to Sled Hill Cave, whereupon she found the Knot Mother exiting the temple slidescape while further grooming the dung monkeys. Taking back the slide projector while chased by the entities, she would open one final portal to the Hand slidescape, a desert-like landscape towered over by 5 erect pillars. There, the Phaetons would come into contact with an entity they came to call Polaris, who helped them end what would come to be known as the Ordinary AWE and fully awaken their paranatural capabilities. All slidescapes outside of Hand were burned by the Phaetons and became mostly inert, with but one exception that would go on to have devastating consequences for the Sadui government organisation that subsequently kidnapped Dylan and placed Jessie under constant surveillance. Ordinary is not the only town to be torn apart by a similar occurrence, known in the Remedy-connected universe as AWEs or Altered World Events. A second one of particular note would begin 8 years later in the Washington town of Bright Falls, which marked the beginning of a terrifying existence for the famous writer Alan Wake. Bright Falls is an unremarkable example of rural Washington Americana, a place where all residents still know one another, and community spirit still runs high. It has little industry, with the mines and mills that provided work for it in the neighbouring town of Watery having long since closed. The natural vistas found here are stunning, bringing in tourists from far and wide. They surround the defunct volcano of Codron Lake, which has been inactive since the 70s, when it had blown up and destroyed the bird-leg cabin that the Finnish poet and filmmaker Thomas Zane has lived in since his move to the States. This beautiful caldera is the subject of long-standing myths and legends, though, which claim that its depths are home to demons, spirits, and ghosts that haunt the area and are responsible for the high number of grisly local murders. These rumours are based in cold, hard fact. Codron Lake sits above an opening to the dark place, where literary texts shape the world and ancient entities bide their time to hatch escape attempts. Artists are drawn to the location for their various reasons, whether that be inspiration or solitude, and an evil force known as the Dark Presence hijacks their work and brings doom to all it faces. The Dark Presence was responsible for the explosion and subsequent disappearance of Thomas Zane in 1970. It was mediator to the Faustian bargain between Wall and Door and the Anderson brothers in 1988, and it managed to ensnare Alan Wake in its home plane in 2010 by holding his wife captive. This event is a focus point of the Remedy-connected universe, and as such, demands additional attention beyond the scope of this codex. For a more in-depth analysis of the Bright Falls AWEs of 2010 and 2023, please wait for the Bright Falls Codex. After surviving hordes of Taken and rescuing his wife Alice, Alan Wake found himself in the Dark Place, trapped by the narratives he has written in the past, present, and future. A place where thought is reality and opinions are truth, the Dark Place is older and far larger than the conceptual reality. Indeed, seeing as it contains myriad pocket dimensions controlled by individual forces, it is possible that the conceptual reality itself is one of these spaces whose governing body is simply too powerful to comprehend. The incredible power that any artist boasts here may make it sound like it is a simple matter to escape, but this may indeed be the downfall of any such creative mind. The Dark Place is sculpted by thought and fiction, but it does not wait for this to be written down. It tugs it straight from the mind, and this means that artists can find themselves struggling to survive their own work. Villains may suddenly spring to life, dead foes may simply rise up again, and the very ground on which you stand may suddenly fall away. Indeed, it may be better if you enter with a more analytical mind. It has been shown that it is the detectives and scientists of the world who find themselves in the calmer waters here, much less accosted by the need to implement conflict and stakes to their scenario. But no matter who you are, a quick escape is crucial, because the Dark Place isn't meant for human life. Time doesn't flow linearly, moving backwards, in loops or in spirals. and every moment you spend contemplating your situation, more and more memories will fall away, until only the very foundation of the self remain, if even that little survives. It is no surprise then that very few who enter here ever leave, and no one does unchanged. There is a group in the Remedy-connected universe who believe that it is their duty as members of the human race to understand the unknowable, categorize the formless, and control that which is intangible. This group is known as the Federal Bureau of Control, and since their founding sometime shortly before the early 60s, they have been the ones that hide these places and impossible events from curious eyes, believing that humanity would be unable to exist as it does in a world where the laws of reality are liable to change. They are the ones who have performed the interviews, conducted the research, and collated the data needed to produce this codex, seeing as we have no jurisdiction over this instance, and therefore can only communicate what is released in the games and other media that are based off of the instance. Ironically for their role, they have recognised that it would be impossible to maintain secrecy in any ordinary office or government facility, where any incidents or mistakes could lead to international attention, and have since its discovery in 1964 therefore based themselves in the oldest house. A place of power, this sprawling brutalist complex found through exploring the tunnels of New York City has various effects that make it the perfect place for the FBC to thrive. It doesn't truly exist in the conceptual reality, with the building found in New York being far too small to house the reactors and panopticon holding facility found inside. It sifts and shapes itself around you, which can be controlled using control points to provide the FBC with infinite space in which to work in. It has the uncanny ability to blend in so perfectly that it is impossible to notice it unless you are already aware of its existence, a trait that extends to the whole FBC while based here. It can be completely locked down at a moment's notice to stop disasters enveloping the oldest house from spreading to the conceptual reality, and it acts as a gateway to other worlds, known by the FBC as thresholds, each of which is unique and offers their own opportunities and risks. The final slidescape opened by the slide projector OOP was only ever used here, and only ever once. When FBC Director Zachariah Trent and his specialised team entered the hand slidescape upon its confiscation after the ordinary AWE, they each had a very different experience. All found themselves in the same place as the Faden twins did, a large desert landscape of red sand and towering pillars, where no sound travelled and where many of the team members lost their lives after being torn apart by powerful shockwaves. Casper Darling, FBC head of research and father figure to the kidnapped Dylan Faden, discovered a similar entity to the Faden twins, which he named Hedron and would go on to bring into the oldest house. Director Trent was the only one to hear anything in the slidescape, a sharp hissing noise that caused his ears to bleed. Though a medical team found nothing strange physically upon its return, this noise never left him, getting louder and clearer over the years. It told him of enemies in the ranks of the FBC, about how Darling was instigating a rebellion against his command, and how Hedron would destroy everything he had built. Over time, Trent changed, becoming paranoid and angsty, reaching a climax in November of 2019. When Hedron had warned Darling about what was to imminently come and guided him into creating the Hedron resonance amplifiers, Trent viewed this as an act of mutiny, marching to the slide projector and using the sole remaining slide he'd kept on his person all of these years to open one final portal. This released the hiss and caused the hiss invasion of the oldest house, another focus point of the Remedy-connected universe. Once again, this is beyond the scope of this codex, so please wait until the release of the Hiss Invasion Codex in the coming months. The histories of the oldest house in FBC are heavily entwined with a collection of entities known only as the Board, represented by the inverted black pyramid found in a parallel dimension to the conceptual reality known only as the astral plane. A white void dominated by this pyramid and otherwise only containing a few small black marble platforms, it is generally reached through the mind in a form of astral projection. Despite this, the astral plane is a physical location, bound to the conceptual reality using a pillar in the oldest house's foundation known as the Nail. After Jessie becomes director of the FBC, she visits the astral plane several times, primarily when binding to new objects of power, as these are governed and potentially created by the board. One of the Hisses' goals throughout their invasion is to breach the astral plane and corrupt the board, a plan they nearly succeed in after plunging Jesse into the Hiss nightmare. The astral plane isn't solely governed by the board though. Although they hold absolute dominion over the area astral dives and directorial challenges are completed in, smaller portions of the rest of the area are occasionally glimpsed. The former, a cast-off from the board, resides in a darker part of the astral plane, hidden from the view of the board, from where it takes over various altered items stored in the oldest house, and further warps their unique effects. Additionally, the astral plane and conceptual reality begin to merge when the nail is destroyed by Marshall, leading to the formation of the astral bleed, seemingly yet again somewhere uncontrolled by the board based off the lack of the inverted black pyramid. Throughout her journey to end the Hiss invasion, Zessie Faden discovered several light cords. Initially discovered during an AWE in Butte, Montana in 1992, they have since proliferated throughout the oldest house, guarding some of its many secrets as a form of final defense. Upon being pulled 3 times, they transport the user to the Ocean View Motel and Casino, an archetypal American motel not found anywhere in the conceptual reality. Along its single corridor, various doors can be found, each of which is embellished with a symbol corresponding to a different plane of reality. Some are unmarked, and to collect the keys to these marked doors, various puzzles must be completed, which change upon every new entry. Only some of these doors have been opened, though FBC agents hiding in the unmarked rooms have auditory confirmation that some form of humanoid has entered doors they cannot find keys for. The door with the inverted black pyramid contains a cord leading back to the oldest house, while the door with the overlapping circles bears resemblance to symbols found during an AWE in the town of Keystone. The spiral door is the only one known to have only appeared after the initial discovery of the Ocean View, appearing in 2017 after the FBC interviewed Alice Wake. Though the door has never been fully opened, Zessie Faden was able to see glimpses of Alan Wake and Thomas Zane through it while traversing the abandoned investigation sector, implying it is linked to the Dark Place. The oldest house does not simply have one entrance out onto the streets of New York City. By its very nature, new entrances to various thresholds are constantly opened and closed throughout the building, oftentimes causing entire departments to be overtaken by dangerous effects. However, the Black Rock Quarry that opened in the maintenance sector of the oldest house has been of great benefit to the FBC, giving them access to the black rock that they would go on to use for dozens of applications. The quarry is known to contain 3 points of interest: the quarry itself, where black rock is mined and transported into the oldest house to process into containment units and fire breaks; the formation, accessible only via the Songmaster Jukebox object apparent and containing the remnants of the NSC-01 reactor, which became a pitched battleground with some of the toughest Hiss enemies; and the city, a formation that the FBC has attempted to explore at least once, though it also has some sort of hypnotic effect that once possessed all members of the quarry staff to stare at it for several minutes. Zessie visited the quarry in order to secure enough black rock to mass produce the vital HRAs needed to protect from the Hiss resonance, though by the time she arrived at the area, numerous astral spikes native to the astral plane had congregated there. It is currently unknown how this is possible, though it is theorized that they may have possibly migrated through the Foundation. Although the quarry has been quickly exploited by the FBC due to the relative stability of the threshold and great importance of the black rock, other thresholds are more of a nuisance. An example is the sealed threshold, found in the east wing of the containment sector. In a way more subtle than the quarry, as it has done little to affect the physical structure of the oldest house, it was formed when a threshold opening released a small amount of a paranatural substance, which reacted with the clocks in the department and caused them to multiply at an astonishing rate. Unable to remove the clocks faster than they were being produced, it was ultimately decided that the apartments needed to be abandoned and sealed off, leaving the clocks to pile up to the point of making much of the area inaccessible. Though Zessie didn't need to enter the sealed threshold in order to end his invasion, she took a detour into it to save the medic wells, and underwent subsequent trips to cleanse the own anchor and paper lantern altered items and bring them back to the Panopticon. The final threshold we've currently been able to collect sufficient data for is the mode threshold, which began in the research sector of the oldest house and has since spread to some degree through all other sectors. Originally localized to the pit, an area of the research sector of the oldest house accessible only via service elevator, it quickly made the entire department unusable and necessitated the rehiring of Dr. Rhea Underhill, one of the most skilled threshold specialists and parabotanists in the Bureau's history, in order to find ways of slowing its spread. The mode produced in the threshold produces a sweet scent and tastes delicious, making it highly tempting and extremely addictive if consumed. Over a short time frame, the consumed mode will quickly overtake the body, transforming the host into a zombie-like creature. It also has the ability to spread across surfaces, especially around mode hosts, which caused it to quickly subsume sizable areas of the oldest house and claim several victims. It was only after Jesse Faden ventured into the pit and produced an anti-mode pill that he was able to resist the temptations of the mode and venture to its origin point, where it had mutated into a plant-like creature known as Mode 1. Destroying that slowed the spread of the mode to a manageable degree, and a combination of burn squads and Jesse's assistance has minimised the threshold staging since. The final location covered in this codex is another localized entirely within the oldest house, and another that the FBC has found a way to use to their advantage. The ashtray maze is found within the research sector of the oldest house, separating central and dimensional research. A twisting, labyrinthine maze impossible to cross under normal circumstance, it was placed here by Director Trent as a last line of defense in the event something terrible happened in dimensional research. The paranatural effect of the ashtray and cigarette object of power, discovered inside an elderly care facility which reported missing patients, the para-utilitarian to which it is bound can choose who can navigate the maze safely, the walls twisting and warping to provide safe passage. Anyone else is at best sent back to the entrance, and at worst lost forever. Unique among objects of power in that its effect persisted upon Trent's death, Jesse was only able to pass through the maze and reach dimensional research by playing a take controlled by the old gods of Asgard, loaned to her by Artie. This sent her on a power trip, destroying the numerous hits that had become lost in the ashtray maze's depths, and it became such an exciting memory that the arcade cabinet altered item was able to extract it from her mind to use for the purpose of entertainment. This marks the end of the RCU Cosmos Codex. Though other locations have been noted to exist in this instance that have not been covered here, data surrounding them is practically non-existent, and as such they are not considered relevant. Additional codexes summarizing locations, events, and individuals from the Remedy-connected universe will be released over the following months. For a more complete understanding of this particular instance, it is recommended that you, as a viewer, watch these when completed. Various playlists will become available upon their release to make this more convenient. This broadcast will end in 3, 2, 1.